Hi, I'm June Edwards, and this is Senior Topics for the second week of October. Looking at the calendar, we'll start with the 10th of October. Italian opera composer Verdi was born in 1830, and he's been popular around the world with opera singers for 300 years, over 300 years. It is also International Newspaper Carrier Day and Indigenous People Day. And do you know, if you were born in the country in which you live, you are an indigenous person. For example, if you were born in California, you are a native Californian, you are an indigenous person of California. So we can celebrate that. It is also National Angel Food Cake Day, and who doesn't like angel food cake? October 11th is the birthday of Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of FDR. She was born in 1884. In 1811, the first steam-powered ferry boat, christened Juliana, began operations. We have come a long way since then. October 12th is Columbus Day, and we will talk about some of the pluses and minuses of that man's life. You know, we all have pluses and minuses. I like to think of the cup as half full, though, and try to concentrate on the positive. It is also Farmers Day, and I'm very grateful to the farmers, the truckers, the people on the trains that brings our food. I know my little vegetable garden could not supply me everything I need. October 13th, in 1775, the Second Continental Congress authorized our Navy. They came in before the Army. It is Thanksgiving Day in Canada, and Margaret Thatcher was born on this date in 1925. In 1860, the first aerial photo in the United States was taken from a balloon in Boston, and they started using aerial balloons in warfare during the Civil War. The next day, October 14th, Dwight David Eisenhower, the 34th president and a great World War II general, was born in 1890. Air Force Captain Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier in a jet over the southwestern desert in 1947. October 15th is funny. First of all, it's Bosses Day, but then somebody decided to also make it National Grouch Day. I hope they're not implying that our bosses are or were grouches. My boss is not a grouch, and I hope he's listening today. Okay, October 16 is Dictionary Day, and it is the birthday of Noah Webster, who organized and printed the first American dictionary in 1758. After 130 years of English settlement, they wanted, on our United States shore, they wanted to show that the American English branch was different from the Old English branch of language. It is also World Food Day. October 17th, Black Poetry Day, National Pasta Day, and I've been making my pumpkin macaroni for my son and his friends. And then in 1989, there was a very bad earthquake. You may remember it destroyed Candlestick Park, which was the old baseball stadium, and it was in the middle of a game in San Francisco. So they had to evacuate the entire stadium, and nobody was seriously injured during that. That's as far as we'll go with the dates for the second week of October. Now let's look at Christopher Columbus. First of all, Christopher Columbus was not his real name. He was born in the Republic of Genoa, which now is part of Italy. He was born Cristoforo Colombo. Other languages have changed his name too. He is Cristobal Colon in Spanish and Christopher Columbus in Swedish. We're not even sure if his Genoese name is correct because the records and documents from his origin, which is more than 500 years ago, are nowhere to be found. Number 2, he almost never got to make his historic journey. Columbus became convinced of the possibility of reaching Asia by traveling west, but he could not get the funding. Contrary to the myth about the flat earth, most people that were cartographers, and he was born into a map-making family, did not believe the earth was flat. The Greeks did not believe the earth was flat. As far back as Aristotle and Euclid, they could mathematically prove it was round, looking at the sun setting on the horizon. Christopher Columbus tried to get support from many sources, including the King of Portugal, but most European rulers thought he was a crackpot. They didn't pay much attention to him. He hung around the Spanish court for years, hoping to convince Ferdinand and Queen Isabella to finance his journey. Finally, he was leaving for France in 1492 when a page was sent to run after his donkey and stop him and bring him back to the Spanish court. They agreed to finance him. I don't think they really believed in him. They wanted to get rid of him. And they promised him incredible things. They said he would be named Admiral of all the oceans and seas of the world. They also promised him great treasures. And a lot of it took 300 years of lawyers wrangling before the family received that much money. They thought if they got rid of him, he would probably die out on the ocean, and they wouldn't have to worry about meeting any of their promises. But he did finally get the financing. Number 3, he was a cheapskate. On his famous 1492 voyage, he had promised a reward of gold to whoever could find land first. A sailor, poor Rodrigo de Triana, was the first to sight land on October 12, 1492. It was a small island in the present-day Bahamas, named San Salvador, but today several islands claim that title. Poor Rodrigo. He never got the reward. Columbus decided to keep it for himself. He told everyone he had seen a hazy sort of light the night before. He had not spoken up because the light was indistinct. Well, you can't argue with the captain. Rodrigo may have gotten the shaft, but there is a nice statue of him finding land in a park in Seville, Spain. Number 4, half of Columbus's voyages ended in disaster. They didn't always give him the best ships. On his famed 1492 voyage, his flagship, the Santa Maria, ran aground and sank, causing him to leave 39 men behind at a settlement they named La Navidad. He was supposed to return to Spain loaded down with spices and jewels and knowledge of an important new trade route. Instead, he returned empty-handed except for a few Indian slaves, and without the best of the 3 ships loaned to him. On his 4th voyage, the ship was even worse. His ship rotted out from under him, and he had to spend a year with his men marooned on Jamaica. Now, with all the resorts today in Jamaica, it might not be so bad, but in those days, it was mosquito infested, malaria, jungle, natives that weren't that great, weren't that friendly. Poor Columbus. Number 5, He was a great captain, but a terrible governor. Grateful for the new lands he claimed for Spain, the King and Queen of Spain made Columbus governor in the newly established settlement of Santo Domingo. Columbus, who had been a fine explorer and a careful map maker, and his brothers ruled the settlement like kings and dictators, making mandates and edicts every day. They took most of the profits for themselves and antagonized the other settlers. It got so bad, the Spanish crown had to send a new governor. Columbus was arrested and sent back to Spain in chains. Number 6 is a plus. He was a very religious man. He wanted to not only find riches for Spain and himself, but he wanted to Christianize the natives. So he was a missionary. He believed that God had singled him out for his voyages of discovery. Many of the names he gave to islands and lands he discovered are religious ones. Later in life, he took to wearing a plain Franciscan habit everywhere he went, looking more like a monk than the wealthy admiral he was. At one time during his third voyage, when he saw the Orinoco River empty out into the Atlantic Ocean off the northern South America, he became convinced he had found the Garden of Eden. Number 7, he was a dedicated slave trader. Because his voyages were primarily economic in nature, he expected to find something valuable on his travels. He was disappointed to find the lands he discovered were not full of gold, silver, pools, or other riches. But he soon decided the natives themselves were a valuable resource. He brought several of them back after his first and second voyages. They were her subjects and not to be enslaved. Later, during the colonial era, the natives were enslaved by corrupt Spanish and other Europeans. Number 8, Columbus never believed he had found a new world. He was looking for a passage to Asia, and he believed that until his dying day. That seemed to show there was a north and south great continent between the going further west to Asia. He continued to believe that Japan, China, India, that's why he named the native people Indians, and the land of the Great Khan were very close to what he had discovered. He even thought maybe it was a pear-shaped world. By the end of his life, most people laughed at him because he stubbornly refused to believe the obvious. Number 9, in his legacy, he made the first major permanent contact with a major new world civilization. Yes, the Irish, the Chinese, Polynesians, and other people probably found North American continent before him, but they never excited the imagination of the Catholic Church or the royalty of Europe to where they would invest in it and make permanent colonies. Columbus was able to do that. He came upon a long dugout trading vessel while exploring the coast of Central America. The occupants had weapons and tools made of copper and flint. They had woven textiles and a beer-like fermented beverage that would keep them from the bacteria-laden water. It is believed the traders were from one of the Mayan cultures of northern Central America. And number 10, no one knows for sure where Columbus' remains are. He died in Spain in 1506, and his remains were kept there before being shipped to Santo Domingo in 1537. They remained there for the next 260 years until they were sent to Havana and Cuba. In 1898, they supposedly went back to Spain. But in 1877, there was a box full of bones bearing his name found in Santo Domingo. Since then, two cities, Seville, Spain, and Santo Domingo, claim they have his remains. In each city, the bones in question are housed in elaborate mausoleums. And who knows if DNA testing would even show anything, because we have no way of knowing other things that would bear his DNA. So there's a lot of mystery surrounding this man. He will probably be controversial for a long time, depending on the historical fads of the day. But he did definitely cause a major shift in the history of our world. Now let's move on to the surprising origins of 8 autumn traditions. There's more to autumn than pumpkins, pumpkin spices, pies, puddings, cookies, and even a semi-obscure sport known as pumpkin chunkin. You ever wondered about why we have corn mazes or bob for apples? Well, here's the surprising origins of 8 fall traditions. We'll look at the corn maze first. Look at this very complex corn maze. It takes months, if not a couple years, to plan these out before they plant the fields. In 1993, Joanne Marks and Don France created the amazing maze, a 2-mile labyrinth on 3 acres of land in Pennsylvania's Lebanon Valley College. Though they and other maze makers have a long tradition, probably 200 or 300 years back, of simple geometric shapes, this is different in notable ways. The corn mazes are cut in fun shapes or interesting images when seen from above. They are not just basic geometric shapes. They include haystacks and piles of pumpkins for those wonderful selfie pictures. They also hire actors who jump out unexpectedly in scary or fun costumes. And this is much bigger on the East Coast, but it's up in Northern California, and it's starting to take hold a little bit more in Southern California. Of course, the third one is leaf peeping. We used to think you could only find it in northern New England or the middle Atlantic states, but I was in Fullerton the other day, and they have discovered and managed to grow a drought-resistant broadleaf tree, and now Fullerton is full of Japanese elms and maples, and you can see several different colorful types of trees in our own area. But this tradition goes back more than 1,200 years. It did not originate in the United States. It comes from Japan. They call it a momijigari, or autumn leaf hunting. It dates back to 800 AD. A renaissance of sorts, the Heian epoch brought about both visual art that celebrates the violent colors of fall and the influential tale of Genji, which mentions an imperial emperor's celebration of the autumn foliage. How did it become an American tradition? Well, Japan and New England were connected via shipping routes. It resulted in New Englanders being exposed to Japanese lacquerware featuring a maple leaf motif. So they became more inclined to seek out the gorgeous leaves in their own neighborhoods without traveling across the world. And of course, we embellish our clothing and our home decorating and all kinds of things, wreaths on our front doors, to remember this time of year. Another tradition is Oktoberfest. From the 3rd weekend of September until the 1st or 2nd or even 3rd Sunday in October. The biggest celebration is up in Big Bear for Southern California. It's also at Old World in Huntington Beach, Alpine Village in Torrance, and also even closer to home in Orange and Anaheim at the Phoenix Club. Now, the Phoenix Club is losing that space with the gigantic tent and all the wonderful buildings with their different activities the end of this year because of the economic impact of the lockdown. But they are already planning on relocating to a site in Brea off Central Avenue. So the Oktoberfest, which they've had since 1961, will continue next year. Oktoberfest has long served as an excuse for revelers to copy the Germans and wet their whistle at the local beer hall, sing and dance with silly songs and dances. The first Oktoberfest was a wedding reception held October 12, 1810, over 300 years ago. The citizens of Munich gathered at the city gates to celebrate the marriage of Bavarian Crown Prince Ludwig to Princess Teresa of Saxony. It was such a popular event that people decided to celebrate again on their first anniversary, and then the following year, and so on and so on. And now it's been going on for more than 300 years. Today, it is the world famous festival of Bavarian culture, and we can all join in saying wunderbar or wonderful in German. The next tradition is election day. We don't think of it in the same way as making apple cider or looking at beautiful leaves, but American elections take place in autumn for a reason. Out of consideration for farming schedules, Congress chose November, when the harvest was finished, but it had not started snowing yet. During the 1845 decree. And why the day of Tuesday? Weekends were a no-go because of church. Wednesdays and Thursdays were market days. Farmers usually went to the market to sell their goods. So Tuesday emerged as a compromise, and the tradition has stuck. How about bobbing for apples? It may not be as popular today as it was 100 years ago, but it is an activity, especially for Halloween parties. Long before kids started dressing up on October 31st, British singles played the game as a sort of courting ritual. Each apple represented a different eligible bachelor. And if the young woman bobbing for the apple bit into it on her first try, the two would live happily ever after. If she got it on her second attempt, it meant the two would get together for a time, but later the romance would fade. And if she didn't get it right till the third try, that foretold doom. Oh boy. All right. There's a new sport, been around for about 25 years, called pumpkin chunkin. For the past 2.5 decades, chunkers have created slingshots and cannons to hurl pumpkins as far as possible. The World Championship Pumpkin Chunkin Contest takes place in Bridgeville, Delaware since 1986. First state native Bill Thompson claims credit for inventing this sport. Tailgating is our 7th autumn tradition that we're looking at. It's now a year-round activity at sporting events and concerts, but it's always been especially popular at football games. How many of you have been to a tailgating party for the game? Well, yeah. One theory says it dates all the way back to the first college football game between Rutgers and Princeton in 1869. Some in attendance sat at their horses' tails end and grilled sausages before the game. Another theory centers around the Green Bay Packers from Wisconsin. Those fans are said to have coined the term tailgating when the Cheeseheads first began supporting the team in 1919. They parked their trucks around the field and sat in the flatbeds for comfortable viewing while eating their food and sipping their drinks. Last one has to do with my favorite candy. Here it is. Where did candy corn come from? Why is it so popular? Well, the first candies were made in the mid-1800s. And then the Goelitz Company picked it up in the 1880s. They also invented the Jelly Belly. More than 35 million pounds, or 9 billion individual pieces of candy corn are produced every year. So it's definitely a favorite. And now for our last topic, early California history. You know, California became a state in 1850. Here's an admission day ticket for the celebration from 1910. That is from the private collection of Jack Daly. Here's another one from the collection of Lou Bayer. It was a big deal for the first 50 years or so when we celebrated the formation of our state. Doesn't seem to be that big a deal now. California joined the United States with the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ended the Mexican-American War in 1848. We were the victors. We didn't have to do anything, but we decided to pay Mexico $15 million for war damages. In turn, Mexico ceded nearly half of its territory, including California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and parts of Colorado, Nevada, and Utah. California officially became a state, our 31st state, in 1850. Now, California was originally known as the Grizzly Bear State, but the bear population was wiped out by 1924. So then it became known as the Golden State. The grizzly bear on California state flag is a tribute to a bear named Monarch, who is captured by Alan Kelly, a reporter hired by newspaper boss William Randolph Hearst in 1899. Monarch was sent to San Francisco and became a star attraction at Woodward's Garden and then Golden Gate Park until his death in 1911. Now, he is on our flag, but there was an earlier bear flag in California. The bear flag image dates back to 1846, 2 years before the ending of the Mexican-American War. A group of Americans settled illegally in California, which was then a part of Mexico. They were scared that the governor was going to expel them. So what did they do? They invaded the Mexican outpost at Sonoma and captured the retired General Mariano Vallejo. We know the name Vallejo. A few days later, they raised a flag that featured a red star and a crudely drawn grizzly and declared the land the California Republic. And that lasted 4 years, and then we joined the United States. And here's a small world story. Who designed the original California flag? Why, William Todd, the nephew of Mary Todd Lincoln, who was Abraham Lincoln's wife. He was our 16th president. What a small world. That's it for this week, folks. I hope you have a blessed rest of your week and are enjoying the cooler weather and the season. Bye, everybody.